inspection process is hugely important. Our recommendation is that we split this into two parts. Underbody on the hoist and walk around on the surface. Now we know this can be done by two separate individuals as long as those individuals know what they are doing in both portions of the inspection. Yeah, hi, here we are. We firstly should apologise for the noise. We're situated here in New Zealand where we can have four seasons in one day, and today we've chosen a day with a little bit of rain. So hopefully you can hear me over and above that. Now just on the front of the vehicle, we're doing an outside inspection now. Basically, as we've explained during the course, is that most of the accidents to a vehicle are in the front. Okay, so that's the main area. The rear is the secondary area, and then the sides. So we're going to start with the front here, and basically what we're looking for is any deformation of panels. Bumper to fender gap is the first one that goes in a frontal impact. So this area will pop out. This gap will be uneven. Very easy to identify. Secondary is the gap between the bumper and the headlight, and then the bonnet and the headlight. So all of these gaps here have to be even. They're even in the factory. If they're not now, there's an issue. Deformation of gapping around the lights and vents is also an idea that there's been something going on in the front. Situation of the grille is another region that we're looking at, especially along the lines of the headlights. If there's been a frontal impact, there'll be different gaps. Again, look side for side. Let's make sure they're the same. Let's make sure they're even. This is the basic region which is going to give you an indicator straight away that there's issues of alignment or pre-accident. Again, with these gaps, again, check side for side that they look identical, because there's a good chance if they're not, it's been in an accident. Okay, we've talked about the frontal areas. We talked earlier about the frontal impacts and the damage between the fender and the bumper being a good indicator. We've also got the arch mould here, which could be deformed or sitting out of shape, which will be a good indicator. We're following on the gaps here from the fender to the bonnet or the hood, along here up to the A-pillar gaps. Again, an area that if it's had a frontal impact, this is affected almost certainly. So this will be a good guide. We have a look up this line here to the cant rail, across the windscreen line to the roof and screen gap. This will tell us if there's any deformation in that area, but also there could be corrosion along these areas. That's a very common place for it. The other side of the A-pillar, being the door gap to the cant rail come A-pillar, also is very important to have even all the way through here. Often if it's had a frontal impact, the gap here will be bigger than it will be smaller. So it must be even all the way through. As we work our way through, we're checking these lines all the way. The door gaps between the front and rear doors could also be ajar. Therefore, that would be a good indicator that there's been damage to the side of the vehicle, or heavy frontal for that matter. Basically follow that line all the way down and make sure it's even, because that's how it was in factory. Along the bottom of the door to the sill is also another good indicator. If we have uneven gaps through here, there's something askew, something to look further at. Door to fender, all have to be even. They were the day it was produced, so they should still be now, unless it's been in an accident and badly repaired. Okay, so we have the rear door gap versus the sill here as well. Again, with the front door, we need evenness along the gap to show that there's no deformation of the panel in the hole. Up the arch, or dog leg as we call it, you've seen that in the course previously, the dog leg area. Carrying on up the door, we've got the gap to the rear fender, rear quarter panel, up the C-pillar in this instance. Again, just checking that these gaps are all even. To the cant rail gap. All square, all even is a good indicator. Moving on to the rear quarter, we're looking at the gap for the glass. Basically, if there's been a replacement panel or any still badly repaired areas, then these could be uneven. As well as that, we have the tail gap versus the quarter panel area around the tail lamp. Again, a bad repair will show uneven gaps. Again, remember I said about the rear damage versus front damage. Most accidents, second most accidents. So this is the area we're looking at again for deformation in this area. We've got a bolt-on item with the sill to arch cover. Make sure there's no deformation through this area. Basically, another indicator to be looking for in your exterior inspection is colour change between panels. Now, quite often, if it's had an accident and been at a panel shop for repair, the repairer hasn't quite got the colour right, and that indicates that there might have been repair in that area. But also remember that the dent might have only been the size of my fingernail and a cosmetic issue, and still the panel beater didn't get the colour right. So therefore it's not necessarily meaning that it's a major collision, but it is a good opportunity to take a second look at maybe the adjoining panels and just see how the colours match. The colours are quite often made of a pearl paint and awkward to match, so it's just an indicator. Keep your eye open and let's utilise that. Now we're going to move on to the interior of the vehicle and around the door jambs. Basically we're looking throughout the whole A pillar, up the inner cant area, down the B pillar. Now we're looking for deformation, remember corrosion, any bleed between hinges, etc. We're working our way right around there. Now when we come back to the A pillar, this is a crucial structural area of the vehicle. Basically the door hinges are bolted to this item, and if there's been a heavy frontal impact, then this panel could very well have been affected and is a major structural item. So we're looking for deformation again around the hinge area. We're also looking for corrosion around the hinge area and also the check strap area. These are good indicators of accident damage. In these areas of the apertures, and we talked about the A pillars, remember the sill and the A pillar and B pillar, etc., all joined together. If there's been previous accident damage in these areas, then quite often a bad repair, i.e. scratches in the paintwork or a different colour, bad sealer, corrosion, will show up. So specifically look for previous repairs. Now this inspection of this aperture covers all four. So you're doing 4 door apertures with all the same process. Okay, now we're going to step into the cabin area and show you what safety features and what needs inspecting in that region. So here's the safety features of the car. Now these should go out when the vehicle starts. If they don't go out, that means there's an issue with either airbags, ABS, ADAS, or within the system itself. So that's a little alarm bell to keep an eye out for. Okay, here we are looking at the speedometer reading, and this needs to be recorded. That's 50,191 kilometres. While we're in the cabin, we're also checking the safety systems, being the safety belts. Now this goes for every position in the vehicle, and more than often there's 5 in a 5-seater. We're checking the operation to make sure they fit, they're the right ends, and they're secure. Now we're going to carry on with our external inspection. Okay, here we are at the rear of the vehicle. In relation to collision damage, we're looking for gaps again, like we did on the side and the front. So here we are with the roof versus the tailgate. We're looking for height difference in collision damage areas. Flush through here. The gaps again need to be even all the way down through to the rear fender, and again round the lights. Down to the rear bumper area, which again is most commonly hit and one of the indicators for previous repairs or damage in this area. It's just basically looking that everything's square and in line. Here we are opening the hatch. In the rear of the vehicle, we're going to cover corrosion and accident indicators in this region. Basically we've got seams around the aperture that in accident damage could have popped, but also in corrosion aspects a car body will flex, and sometimes the flex of the body will create a hairline crack in the sealer, therefore allowing water in, which could start corrosion. Now that water, if it was coming in through here, will be running on the inside of this D pillar area, could be into the tail light, rear panel and lower regions. That's where the water is going to end up, so that's where the corrosion is going to be most prominent. Also around there from that point is the aperture rubber. Now this is a very, very common place for corrosion to start, and also an indicator for accident damage, because there'll be unevenness along these bottom edges when the car has been hit in the rear. So we're looking in all the seams where the quarter joins the inner cant area both the ways. We're looking for the hinge area, so there could be corrosion around the hinge area, and again this is a very important structural area. we're looking for deformation, that maybe there's been a replacement tailgate from a rear hit. So all the way around, we're repeating the process on this side, making sure there's no rust heave on the seams. You'll see the little brown stains if there is rust heave, or again you'll see split sealer. And that aperture, again, we reiterate, is a very, very important factor for both corrosion and for accident damage. Okay, now we're going to check for other obvious areas in the rear for either corrosion or collision damage. We'll just lift up these two inner trays here, and on the inside we can generally see the spare wheel sitting. So the boot floor, rear panel and top side of the chassis rails are all visible from here. So if there's been collision damage in the rear, we should be able to pick it up with crumple zones collapsing, and in relation to corrosion, sitting under the spare wheel, water will build up and corrosion will start in that area. Then back up the other side, repeating the same process, looking at all gaps, any colour disfiguration, any scratches in the paint that might be a little bit not normal. And then we work our way back to the front of the car, where we're seeing the gaps again at the front, remembering the front is the most important or most hit area of a motor vehicle, across the front. So we're back to the start of the car. We've now done a complete 360-degree turn of the vehicle. Here we are looking under the hood or bonnet area of the vehicle. So the first thing to notice in this area is to locate the VIN numbers, the identification of the vehicle. Now that can be in several places. So basically in this vehicle we're looking at it central on the firewall, and the whole number is stamped there from factory. We can also see it often on the top of the inner guards, along the hood ledge, or on the radiator support panel. So generally it will be a stamp and a tag. You can find it in both varieties. So if we've been unsuccessful under the hood in locating a VIN on the vehicle, then as per the course instructions, you'll see that the VIN location is in several areas. But in this particular car, you'll see that on the right-hand driver's side B pillar, in the lower area, we can see the factory VIN tag. Now this cannot be defaced or have been off or defaced in any way, so to show there's been repair. So it must be factory original. The second thing we're looking for under the hood area is damage. Okay, and most importantly damage. We've got two areas of damage: corrosion and accident, pre-accident damage, or bad repairs basically. So we're looking at the main structure, being the chassis rail of the vehicle. Down here on the inner guard area we can see these stampings. These are crush zones, so when it's had an accident they will fold up first, and bad repairs would show up in that particular sighting. The factory seam sealer here, you can see around the factory joints. If that is cracked in any way, or any corrosion starting under here, there's a sign that there's been movement in that area. We then work our way across the bulkhead to see if there's any corrosion on seams through this area. So very unlikely that you'll find damage from a previous accident in the bulkhead area, because it's been quite severe if that's the case. Generally it's going to be on the two outer regions, but that doesn't mean you don't look. Basically have a good look along the lines, and then back again, doubling that exercise by going through the inner guards, hood ledge, chassis rail and radiator support and lower cross member. In the guard areas we can see the crush zones that we were talking about, comparing side to side, and also that there's been no previous repairs. This is the most obvious reason, or the clearer area, that you will find damage. The uprights to the radiator support also have crumple zones and also are made of several different panels. So therefore if there's been movement or repair, you will see uneven surfaces and uneven joins from side to side. Again, compare one side to the other and you may notice that there has been repairs. Basically we're looking for corrosion this time, and that's as serious as damage due to the structure of the vehicle collapsing in areas of corrosion that are forming. So we start in the hinge area for the hood. Remembering if that area is corroded, then the bonnet could release in an accident prematurely, and basically this is a part of the impact collision system, as where it could go through the windscreen or above the windscreen. So it's very important that we have no corrosion in this area, or anywhere for that matter. But we move on to the tops of the towers, of the strut towers. This is a very, very common area for corrosion. We marked about sealer earlier on. You'll see rust bleed starting. So that's an orangey browny sort of colour, and basically you've got bare steel between the two items, so if it's exposed to any oxygen or water, it will start rusting. As will spot weld joints that are getting corrosion between them will start to pop open, and that will be quite clear to see and what you are looking for. Brown staining around that area sort of indicates that there's a bit of a problem. Down into the inner guard area, we're looking for corrosion that may have started between two of the seams, between the chassis rail and the tower. Again, you'll see the red bleed, or if it's been a bad repair, you might also see the bleed. Now onto the lower cross member of the radiator support panel. We can sort of see most of it from here without pulling the car to bits, and you'll get an indication as to whether there's any rust. This is an area where the radiator might bleed out if it's got an overheating issue, so that starts rust and therefore carries on and makes it 10 times worse over a period. So keep your eyes open for that. We work our way across till we get to this area where we're talking the battery. Now if the battery has been broken at some stage or tipped over, might be accident, might just be someone changing the battery and the acid has come out and fallen into this region, then the battery tray, which is attached to the chassis, therefore structural, will start rusting. Corrosion will start in that area. This is a very, very common area to corrode, and a definite look to see through this side. The rest of the side, inner guard, is identical to the other. But let's not forget the bulkhead, because the seams on the top bulkhead to the lower firewall, again, were all bare steel when they were put together. So there's a good chance corrosion could be starting in these under trays, where you're getting water down through the windscreen aperture to sit in this area, and that will start rust, corroding badly in that area. So we need to really keep an eye out and get some mirrors, etc., underneath this area to confirm that the rust is not starting. Now we're moving on to the underbody inspection. We're now going to do our 360-degree underbody inspection process to show you. Everyone has their own way of doing things and where they start and where they stop, but as long as you pick up every single point of the car, our process works fairly well from the centre around the outside and back to the centre times 4, and we confirm with that we get everything covered. This is a unibody vehicle, and this is a vehicle that you will see mostly in Japan as you're getting them through ready for shipping. This has got underbody covers, so there's limitations to what you can see. Just make sure you're as thorough as you can to do what you can see to get your inspection done correctly. This entire inspection process, we're looking for 3 specific things. And it's not just specific to one part of the car, it's specific to the whole underbody of the car, i.e. suspension, mounts, everything needs to be looked at. We're looking at previous repairs, we're looking for corrosion, and we are looking for current damage. So those are the 3 items to hunt out and find. We start our inspection process at the beginning of the vehicle, the front being the radiator support. We start at the centre of it, and then we work to our right, or the driver's side of the vehicle. We have the front radiator support and the inner guard regions that house the suspension. Again, a very crucial part for no damage or corrosion. Back out to the sills, down the outside of the sills, up into the inner guard and outer chassis rail region. Then up here we can see the rear suspension towers and rear chassis rail outers to the rear of the outer panel, all the way across the outside of the back, floor pan in the rear, repeating the process on the inner guard region up to the rear suspension towers, and repeat the process down through the sill line to that front torque box area and suspension mounts. Again, the outer of the chassis rail and front tower. The chassis rail supports the radiator support panel, and we're back to where we started from. The second part of it is through the inside part of the chassis rail and structure. We're getting the opportunity to look up in here at this point, through the rails, into the torque box area, into the floor rails and the floor centre tunnel area, all the way through. We get to here, we again, torque boxes, inner side of the chassis structure and suspension mounts, etc. We're checking boot floors at this point, inner of the rear panel, and again repeating the process on this side. We're coming down the inside of the chassis, checking cross members, floor. Crucial point that the suspension hanging from a chassis rail is of good nature and solid. We come to the chassis rail end of where the torque box is, the rear torque box in this region. Then we run through sill edges, floor pan and floor rails to the front torque box, to which the front chassis rail is joined. A major structural point of the vehicle, affecting all its safety systems, etc. So we run through the front chassis rail here, through to the radiator support panel. So that's the completion of our underbody process of inspection. We hope you've gained plenty of knowledge from what we've shown you today. If there's any information that you clearly need or questions you'd like to ask on this journey, don't hesitate to contact us at Vcert. We'll be more than happy to assist you on the journey.